Welcome to our lecture on the physical geography of India. Today, we are diving into the fascinating features of India's coastline and its coastal plains. Let us start by looking at the sheer scale of it. India boasts a massive total coastline of 7,516.6 kilometers. This includes 5,422.6 kilometers along the mainland and an additional 2,094 kilometers surrounding its island territories. When we break down this massive coastline across 9 states and 4 union territories, we see some interesting numbers. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands actually have the longest stretch at 1,962 kilometers. On the mainland, Gujarat leads with over 1,200 kilometers, followed closely by Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Even smaller territories like Daman and Diu contribute to this extensive maritime boundary. How did this coastline come to be? It was formed from the faulting of the ancient supercontinent Gondwanaland during the Cretaceous period. Now, despite its impressive length, the Indian coast does not offer many sites for good natural harbors. Why is that? It is because the coastline is relatively straight. Indented coastlines, like those found in Europe, provide sheltered inlets and estuaries, making it much easier and cheaper to construct and maintain ports. Geographers categorize the Indian coastline into 2 main types based on their geological history: coastlines of emergence and coastlines of submergence. A coastline of emergence is formed when the land is uplifted or the sea level drops. The Coromandel Coast in Tamil Nadu and the Malabar Coast in Kerala are prime examples. Because the seabed is exposed, you will typically find features like sandbars, spits, lagoons, and wide beaches here. Conversely, a coastline of submergence occurs when the land subsides or sinks, or when the global sea level rises, flooding the coastal areas. Parts of the Konkan coast, spanning Maharashtra and Goa, fall into this category. This submergence creates deep, sheltered waters right up to the shore, which, as we will see, is excellent for port development. Moving inland from the water's edge, we find the coastal plains of India. Based on their location and the active geological processes shaping them, they are divided into the eastern and western coastal plains. These flatlands were formed over millions of years by the consolidation of fluvial deposits, essentially sediments brought down by rivers. Because of this solid foundation, they are highly stable regions, much like the ancient peninsular plateau they border. Let us examine the western coastal plains first. They stretch all the way from the Rann of Kutch in the north down to Kanyakumari in the south. They are relatively narrow, with an average width of about 65 kilometers, pinching in the middle and widening at the northern and southern ends. Interestingly, the fast-flowing rivers here do not form deltas. Because this is a submerged coastal plain, it forms a narrow belt right against the sea. That submergence we just talked about is a massive economic advantage. The deep waters close to the shore provide perfect natural conditions for developing ports and harbors. This is why the West Coast is dotted with major maritime hubs, including Kandla in Gujarat, Mazagaon and Navasheva in Maharashtra, Marmagao in Goa, Mangalore in Karnataka, and Cochin in Kerala. Starting our journey down the West Coast, we first hit the Kutch and Kathiawar region in Gujarat. Geologically, these flat terrains are actually extensions of the peninsular plateau. In the distant past, the Kutch Peninsula was an island surrounded by seas and lagoons. Over time, massive amounts of sediment brought down by the Indus River filled these water bodies. Today, due to a lack of recent rainfall, it has transformed into a harsh, arid, and semi-arid landscape. This region has some incredibly unique features. To the north lies the Great Rann, a massive salt-soaked plain, with its southern continuation, the Little Rann, lying to the southeast. South of Kutch is the Kathiawar Peninsula, home to the Mandav Hills, which display a radial drainage pattern. Here you will also find Mount Girnar, a volcanic peak that stands as the highest point in Gujarat at 1,117 meters, and the famous Gir Range, the last refuge of the Asiatic lion. Moving slightly east of Kutch and Kathiawar, we enter the Gujarat Plain. This area covers southern Gujarat and the coastal zones of the Gulf of Khambat. It's been shaped over millennia by major rivers like the Narmada, Tapti, Mahi, and Sabarmati. While the eastern part of this plain is highly fertile, thanks to these rivers, the coastal areas are mostly covered by wind-blown loess, creating a drier, semi-arid landscape. South of the Gujarat Plain lies the Konkan Plain, stretching from Daman all the way down to Goa, covering the coastlines of Maharashtra and Goa. This plain is characterized by marine erosional features, where the sea has carved into the land. A prime example of this is Thane Creek around Mumbai. It is a significant embayment, a recess in the coastline forming a bay, which serves as an absolutely excellent natural harbor. Continuing south, we reach the Karnataka coastal plain, extending from Goa to Mangalore. The marine topography here is very distinctly marked. One of the most spectacular features of this region occurs where streams originating in the Western Ghats cascade down incredibly steep slopes to reach the coastal plain, forming massive waterfalls. A notable example is the Sharavati River, which plunges down to form the famous Garsopa or Jog Falls. Finally, on the west coast, we have the Kerala or Malabar Plain. Stretching from Mangalore down to the southern tip of India at Kanyakumari, this plain is noticeably wider than the Karnataka plain and is characterized by its very low-lying terrain. What truly sets the Kerala coast apart, however, is its intricate network of water bodies, including lakes, lagoons, spits, and most famously, its backwaters. These backwaters are locally known as kayals. They're essentially shallow lagoons or inlets of the sea that run parallel to the coastline. The undisputed king of these is Vembanad Lake, the largest backwater in Kerala, stretching about 75 kilometers long. These waters are deeply tied to the local culture. For instance, the Panamata Kayal, a southern extension of Vembanad, hosts the thrilling Nehru Trophy Valankali, a famous annual snakeboat race. Now, let us cross over to the other side of the peninsula to explore the eastern coastal plains. These stretch from the Subarnarekha River on the West Bengal-Odisha border all the way down to Kanyakumari. Regionally, the stretch between the Mahanadi and Krishna rivers is known as the Northern Sarkars, while the area between the Krishna and Kaveri rivers is called the Carnatic. Unlike the narrow western plains, the eastern plains are quite extensive, boasting an average width of 120 kilometers. Why are they so wide? Much of the eastern plains are the result of massive alluvial deposits dropped in the coastal zone by major rivers like the Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, which form large, fertile deltas. Furthermore, the eastern coastal plain is an emergent coast with a very extensive continental shelf that extends up to 500 kilometers into the sea. Because the shelf is so wide, the sea here is quite shallow, which poses significant challenges for port development and results in very few natural harbors. Breaking down the east coast from north to south, we start with the Utkal Plain. This region comprises the coastal areas of Odisha and is dominated by the fertile Mahanadi Delta. The most notable geographical feature here is undoubtedly Chilka Lake. It holds the title of the largest brackish water lake in India. Just south of Chilka Lake, the terrain gently rises into a series of low hills. Moving south, we enter the Andhra Plain, which extends down to Pulicat Lake. The defining feature of this plain is the massive combined delta formed by the Godavari and Krishna rivers, which have merged into a single physiographic unit. This delta is actually expanding. It recently moved further toward the sea, which shifted Koleru Lake from being a coastal lagoon to an inland lake. Further south, Pulicat Lake is blocked from the sea by Sriharikota Island, famous as the launch site for ISRO. As we discussed earlier regarding emergent coasts, the Andhra Plain features a very straight coastline. Because it lacks the indentations that provide sheltered waters, it generally lacks good natural harbors. However, there are a couple of highly notable exceptions that have been developed into major ports, specifically Vishakhapatnam and Machilipatnam, which handle significant maritime trade. The southernmost section of the east coast is the Tamil Nadu Plain, extending from Pulicat Lake to Kanyakumari, with an average width of 100 kilometers. Its most significant and economically vital feature is the Kaveri Delta, where the plain broadens out to 130 kilometers. Thanks to incredibly fertile soil and excellent irrigation systems, this delta region is proudly known as the granary of South India. You will often hear a specific historical and geographical term used for this southeastern stretch, the Coromandel Coast, sometimes referred to as Payan Ghat. This term does not just refer to Tamil Nadu. It actually encompasses the combined region of the entire Tamil Nadu coast, along with the southern parts of the Andhra coast. So why do these coastal plains matter so much to India? Their significance is immense. They provide highly fertile soil for agriculture, particularly for rice and coconuts. The sedimentary rocks beneath them hold substantial mineral oil deposits. The sands of the Kerala coast are rich in monazite, crucial for nuclear power. Gujarat's low-lying areas drive India's salt production. Add to this the booming tourism industry around beaches and backwaters, the vital ports for international trade, and a massive fishing industry, and you see how vital these plains are to the economy. Let us look at how this knowledge is tested. In a 1995 UPSC exam, students were given this map with lines drawn along the coastal region and asked what they indicate. The options were pollution zones, salinity isoplaths, sovereignty limits, or underwater relief contours. The correct answer is D, underwater relief contours. Let us break down exactly what that means. The map depicts the underwater topography of India's coastal region. Those lines are contour lines that connect points of equal depth, showing the shapes and drop-offs of the seafloor. Understanding this underwater landscape is crucial. It helps navigators determine safe routes for massive shipping vessels, assists engineers in locating stable sites for offshore oil rigs, and helps scientists study ocean currents and marine habitats. Next, we will shift our focus away from the mainland to explore the fascinating geography of the Indian islands. India's territory includes two major groups of islands with very different geological origins. In the Arabian Sea, we have Lakshadweep, which are coral atolls formed over the Reunion hotspot volcanic taine. Because they are low-lying, they are highly vulnerable to rising sea levels. Over in the Bay of Bengal, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are tectonic in origin, representing a continuation of the Arakan-Yoma mountain range, and feature active volcanoes. Additionally, India has islands formed by river deposits in the Indo-Gangetic Delta and submerged formations like Rama Setu between India and Sri Lanka. Focusing first on the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, these were formed by the tectonic collision between the Indian Plate and the Burma Minor Plate, which is a part of the larger Eurasian Plate. Geologically, these islands are actually the submerged southward extension of the Arakan-Yoma mountain range in Myanmar, which itself extends from India's Purvanchal Hills. The archipelago spans a massive 590 kilometers, stretching from roughly 6 to 13 degrees north latitude. The archipelago is broadly divided into two distinct categories, the Andaman group in the north and the Nicobar group in the south. These two groups are separated by a crucial body of water known as the 10-degree channel. Because of their latitudinal position close to the equator, these islands experience heavy convectional rainfall and support lush, dense equatorial vegetation. Zooming in on the Andaman group, it is a closely knit cluster of approximately 200 islands. We can broadly categorize them into two main sections. First is Great Andaman, which is further subdivided into North, Middle, and South Andaman. The second distinct section is Little Andaman, which sits further to the south. There are a few key geographical markers here. Little Andaman is separated from South Andaman by a body of water called the Duncan Passage. The capital of the Union Territory, Port Blair, is strategically situated in South Andaman. If you are looking for the highest elevation in the entire archipelago, you will find it at Saddle Peak, which rises to 737 meters in North Andaman. The Andaman Islands are home to India's only active volcano, located on Barren Island. Nearby, Narcondam Island features a volcano that is currently considered extinct or dormant. Beyond the volcanic rock, the islands are primarily composed of tertiary sandstone, limestone, and shale, with beautiful coral deposits lining the coastal areas. Moving south of the 10-degree channel, we find the Nicobar group. This cluster consists of 7 large islands and several smaller ones. Car Nicobar marks the northernmost point of this group. At the very bottom lies Great Nicobar, which is not only the largest island in the group, but also the southernmost point of India, sitting geographically very close to Sumatra Island in Indonesia. Let's look at how this is tested. In the 2014 UPSC prelims, students were asked which pair of islands is separated by the 10-degree channel. As we just discussed, this channel acts as a natural maritime boundary, situated approximately 10 degrees north of the equator, perfectly dividing the Andaman Islands in the north from the Nicobar Islands in the south. Therefore, the correct answer is A. In 2018, a question focused on Barren Island. Statement 1 is correct. It is the only confirmed active volcano in the Indian subcontinent. Statement 2 is incorrect because Barren Island is located northeast of Port Blair, not east of Great Nicobar. Statement 3 is also incorrect. While it did erupt in 1991, its last major eruption was actually in 2017, and it has shown intermittent activity since. Thus, only Statement 1 is correct, making the answer A. Now, let's shift our focus to the western coast and the Arabian Sea to explore the Lakshadweep Islands. In both Malayalam and Sanskrit, the name Lakshadweep beautifully translates to 100,000 islands. In reality, it is a group of 36 coral islands located between 280 to 480 kilometers off the coast of Kerala. It holds the distinction of being a uni-district union territory and the smallest one in India. Within this group of 36, a few islands stand out. Kavaratti serves as the capital. If you are flying in, you will land at Agatti, which hosts the territory's only airport. Minicoy is the southmost and second largest island. On the opposite end, Amini Divi is the northernmost. Finally, Androt holds the title of the largest island in Lakshadweep, though it is still quite small at just 4.9 square kilometers. Historically, these islands were known by three separate names, the Laccadive, Minicoy, and Amandivi Islands. It wasn't until 1973 that they were collectively renamed as Lakshadweep. The Amandivi subgroup consists of 6 main islands in the north. The Laccadive subgroup has 5 major islands, including the capital Kavaratti and Kalpeni, and Minicoy stands alone as the distinct southmost island. Geologically, the foundation of these islands is tied to the Reunion hotspot volcanism. The coastlines often feature storm beaches made of loose pebbles, cobbles, and boulders. Unlike the Andaman Islands, Lakshadweep has an incredibly flat topography. You won't find hills, streams, or valleys here. Most of the land sits less than 5 meters above sea level, which makes this entire Union territory highly vulnerable to the impacts of global sea level rise. Just like the 10-degree channel in the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea has crucial maritime boundaries based on latitude. The 11-degree channel separates the Amanivi Islands in the north from Cananore Island in the south. The 9-degree channel is a major divider, separating the main Lakshadweep archipelago from Minicoy Island. Further south, the 8-degree channel acts as the international maritime boundary, separating India's Minicoy Island from the Maldives. Beyond the major archipelagos, India has notable offshore islands. New Moor Island is a fascinating, uninhabited sandbar in the Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta. It literally emerged from the sea following the devastating Bola cyclone in 1970, and its sandy nature means it appears and disappears intermittently. Despite being uninhabited, it sparked a sovereignty dispute between India and Bangladesh, largely driven by speculation over oil and natural gas reserves, and historical disagreements over the Radcliffe Award boundary lines. Another critical island in the Ganges Delta is Sagar Island. Situated on the continental shelf of the Bay of Bengal, it lies right at the mouth of the Hooghly River, separated from the Indian mainland by an arm of the river itself. Culturally, it is incredibly significant, best known for hosting the Ganga Saga Mela, which is one of the largest religious gatherings in the world after the Kumbh Mela. To wrap up our study of Indian islands, remember the stark contrasts. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands are rugged, tectonic formations with active volcanism, serving as an extension of major mountain ranges. In contrast, Lakshadweep consists of flat, low-lying coral atolls built on ancient volcanic hotspots, making them highly sensitive to climate change. Meanwhile, delta islands like New Moor and Sagar highlight the dynamic, ever-changing nature of India's river systems.